Guess what this china cabinet needs? That's right, a ship. Every china cabinet needs a ship. And I've always thought that model ships were very cool. I even thought that I would like to build one day, but I probably knew I wouldn't, mostly because I knew I didn't have the patience or the time. But now that I'm retired, things have changed a bit. Anyway, I found out through our family genealogy that we have a strong connection to the Mayflower. On the Smith side of the family, we have at least 13 direct bloodline relatives that were passengers on the Mayflower. William and Mary Brewster, James Chilton, his wife, and their young daughter, Mary, Francis Cook, Stephen and Elizabeth Hopkins, their daughter, Damaris Hopkins, William and Alice Mullins, their daughter, Priscilla Mullins, and John Alden, who Priscilla married. Now, something about the Mayflower that many people don't know. After their long 66-day voyage over, the Mayflower just didn't pull over, stop, and drop the passengers off and sail away. Because it was November and it was on the onset of winter, the Mayflower remained in the safe, protected harbor of Cape Cod. And during this time, most of the men went to shore to live at their settlement site of Plymouth, and they worked on building up their dwellings and fort. I'm sure the men kept busy doing many other things, stuff like felling the trees, delivering firewood and water back to the Mayflower, scouting out the land, and standing guard, watching out for the hostile natives and such. And while these men worked on their settlement, all the women and children continued to live on the Mayflower. I'm sure one reason that the women and children were confined to the safety of the Mayflower is because of the horror stories that they heard, some true and some not so true, of what the savage Indians might do to them. And so the women and children lived on the Mayflower for another 4 months through the cold New England winter. And this is in the middle of that era in world history that is called the Mini Ice Age. Now, Governor William Bradford, he was their Pilgrim leader. He left us a journal and wrote of many instances of how cold and fierce the weather was that first winter. He also wrote of the hardships they faced. During this first winter, almost half of the Mayflower's 102 passengers died. So, getting back to my idea of building a model of the Mayflower, and in reading the writings of William Bradford, I could easily picture the Mayflower anchored far out in an icy bay in early February of 1621. I also see the Mayflower covered in snow, frost, and ice after a cold New England winter storm blew through. William Bradford writes, in January and February of 1621, they sometimes were losing 2 or 3 passengers a day, and they ferried these dead to shore at night to be buried at night in shallow graves. They did this at night so that the natives would not know just how many of the pilgrims had died. So that's what I wanted to do, build this ship that represents a scene in our family history. This model represents the night after one of these winter storms blew through, leaving the ship covered in ice and snow. And it represents the night that our 13-year-old ancestor mother, Mary Chilton, lost her mother. And on this night, Mary's mother was loaded onto a shallop and rowed to shore to be buried. Mary Chilton lost her father in November, and with her mother now gone, was an orphan in the New World. Now, Priscilla Mullins, another ancestor mother of ours, lost her entire family that first winter. She lost her father, her mother, and her brother. Priscilla was 18 or 19 at the time and went on to marry a crew member by the name of John Alden. So this diorama also represents Priscilla Mullins and the sacrifices she and her family made in coming to the New World. Also in my diorama, I depict an ice floe close to the Mayflower. I'm pretty sure ice floes similar looking to this one would have been something they saw as they looked out upon the icy waters. You can Google image Cape Cod ice in winter and you'll see what I'm talking about. And here's the background I painted to let us know that it was nighttime in this scene when they would have rowed the dead to shore for their night burial. And on February 6, 1621, there was a full moon. So that's the date of this scene. And to sum up, can you imagine boarding the Mayflower a month or 2 before the voyage actually began? Then the 66-day voyage over, then living on board that floating icebox for another 4 months through the cold New England winter. With all the dying and sickness all around, imagine the winter storms and all that melting snow and the ice on the ship, all that icy water pouring through the planks of the ship. When March came and it was finally time to go ashore, our Mary Chilton is said to be the first female passenger to set foot at Plymouth Rock, thus ushering in the great migration of family, freedom, and opportunity into the New World. And then there's some that say, well, what about Jamestown? Wasn't it the first successful English settlement in North America? To this I would say yes, but Jamestown was all about financial opportunity. It was men coming over to trap beaver, harvest trees, and such. But Plymouth was about this opportunity, but it was also about freedom and family. This freedom and family is what made Plymouth different than Jamestown, and is what started the great migration from England to the New World. So I guess that's it. Thanks for listening, everybody. You can go to YouTube and search William Bradford, Plymouth Plantation. I think there's a audiobook there that you'll see. It's like 11 hours long, kind of hard to understand because of the way they talked back then. But it'll give you pretty good insight as to what Plymouth Colony was all about and what they went through. See y'all later, and have a great Thanksgiving.